Well, we're at the end of November, and our assistant pastor, what he does is he takes what I've said this month and what Reverend Paul has said, and he ties it up in a bow and gives us what God has given him. So without further ado, let us welcome our assistant pastor, Reverend Jerrold Smith.
And up to date on how things should be done, but I don't know whether it's the lighting or just my eyes. I decided to go with the big print. I heard y'all had a nice party last weekend, and I am so sad that I missed the party. I heard everybody had a good time. The kids had a good time. You turned the back lot into Disneyland, and they just had a ball. But you know, sometimes when you do what I do, you get these phone calls. So last week I got a phone call from my daughter, I think it was Wednesday, and she was visiting her godfather, who's a real dear friend of mine, in Las Vegas, and he'd been on dialysis for 10, 15 years, long time, doing well, but then he had some throat cancer and had some treatment, and you know, and sometimes that chemo and that radiation can just wear you down. So he was in one of those moods where he was ready to just throw it in. So she said, Dad, you got to come see Howard. I said, okay, all right. So I'm trying to figure out how I'm going to do that. And then the next day I get a phone call from the wife of a dear friend of mine who lives in the Bay Area. He had a stroke. Took him to the hospital. He had 2 more strokes while he was in the hospital. So she reached out to me and gave me the word. She said, you got to come see your boy. So consequently, on Friday, my wife took me to the airport, hopped on the airplane to the Bay Area, spent all day Saturday with Jamal, left there at 10 o'clock at night, went to Vegas, spent all day Sunday with Howard, came back Monday morning, back to LA. Needless to say, your boy was tired. But they both needed to hear something. They both needed to understand, regardless of the situation they were in, the one thing that they should do was open the door to gratefulness. I encourage them both not to think about what's happening now. Think about what's going to happen as you move through this. Think about the life that you lived up to this point and change your perspective, change your view, knowing that everything, as we say, is already all right. And regardless of what happens, it's going to be a good thing. So that's why I missed the party. But I'm here today to close out I Open the Door to Gratefulness. And I want to wish everybody that Brenda mentioned on the list a happy birthday. But I got to say a special happy birthday to my boy, Dr. Ronnie Jones. You know, because when things get heavy, we all need somebody to lift them. And when things get heavy for your boy, he's always there to lift it for me. God bless you, Dr. Ronnie. So we're about to enter Thanksgiving. Y'all are getting ready to eat what you know you ain't supposed to eat. Eat too much of it. Put some in the refrigerator, eat it all next week. Freeze some and eat it next Thanksgiving. But I really enjoy Thanksgiving because Thanksgiving is a time when we recognize life's blessings. It's a time when we stand on the premise that God is good all the time. It's one of those times where we have an opportunity to look beyond our differences, unite with family and friends. It's a time when we can celebrate the ability to make the most out of what we've been given. That's what Thanksgiving is all about. We use food to symbolize the endless bounty that God will always provide for us. It's one of those holidays that crosses all religious, political, and cultural barriers. We bless where we came from. We bless where we're going. And most importantly, we bless where we are. That being said, I need to give you a disclaimer for today's message. You know, things have been a little shaky for some of us over the last few weeks. And I'm one of those people who try to have as much empathy as I can for the situation. But I also one of those people that believe no matter what happens, there's something that we can do about it. So the matter is not what happens, it's what we do about it. And in that vein, I'm not interested in the hows and whys of our, your, or my situation, as I am what you individually and consciously propose to do about it. You know, there's an ancient Chinese philosopher. His name is Lao Tzu. And sometimes when negative things happen or things that we perceive as being, terrible happen, we spend more time thinking about what happened and what that circumstance can do to minimize our joy, our living, our circumstances. But Lao says this. He says, if you look to others for fulfillment, you'll never be fulfilled. So if you think there's a person or persons or group of persons that can impact your life and make you go left when you want to go right and make you go right when you want to go left, he's saying to you that the only person that can guide you to your promised land is you. So he tells us to be content with what you have. He reminds us to rejoice in the way things are. He says when you realize there is nothing lacking, the whole world belongs to you. He says when you realize that you lack nothing, you have everything, you're not fretting, you're not worried. You see, this renowned Chinese philosopher of Taoism tells us that we focus on the way of the universe. He says, moving forward with the flow of things. He's one who believes in the yin and yang, the balance of opposites. He taught us the importance of stillness. He taught us the importance of openness. He taught us the importance of discovering the buried parts of oneself. And most importantly, his focus was on living in accordance with nature. He was around in the 6th century BC. That's a long time ago. And I know y'all think the phrase going with the flow is hip in modern culture. But he's the one who coined that phrase, going with the flow, in the 6th century BC. He's reminding us that if we look outside yourself for satisfaction, your rewards will be temporary. But if we truly believe there's a power and presence within, we lack nothing. Whenever and wherever you are in your journey, we must have faith that your desires are achievable. So I don't care how grim you think things are. Those things that you aspire for yourself, for your family, for your community are possible. They're doable. But guess who's got to do it? Y'all. So regardless of appearances, always celebrate our connection with the ultimate healing power of God within. When you know all things are possible, if we realize that every challenge contains its solution, we can always open the door to gratefulness. So no matter what, we can and should always be grateful. You see, this world belongs to all those who accept and demonstrate the consciousness of the Christ. which is simply to say it belongs to those who believe in unconditional love and believe that we should always be expressing gratitude for the circumstance and situation, no matter what it looks like. You can be lame, you can be diseased or dead to your truth. But when you open the door to gratefulness, you can get up and walk. You can cast out physical disease and mental demons. You see, when you open the door to gratefulness, you can acknowledge a consciousness of an unlimited power that can move mountains, that can walk on water, and that can raise the dead. When you open the door to gratefulness, you can climb to the highest level of spiritual realization. You see, we overcome all negativity by standing and walking on the waters of vital energy. You can demonstrate the mental capacity to exhibit an unwavering faith in an unformed potential of a spiritual manifestation. You see, when you're going through whatever life hands us, we should be grateful that we're growing in consciousness on our journey. We must be grateful that no matter how old you are, you should remain youthful in your request for spiritual understanding. We become preoccupied sometimes. We allow things to cripple us. But that's only when we focus on the ways we have and are being mistreated. But without faith and without an attitude of gratitude, when things don't go as we expect for them to go, all we tend to do is anticipate them getting worse. When that day came, it didn't go like you wanted it to go. But too many of us got in this mode of thinking that, oh, it's going to get worse. It's getting ready to be real terrible. But we should only consider how grateful we are when things go as planned. That's when we usually sing hallelujah, right? When things go as we want them to go. We have no problem showing gratitude when we're in good health. We have no problem being grateful when we got a good job. We have no problem when we're laying in the arms of a passionate lover. We're grateful during those times. But let something happen we don't like, something happen that we don't understand. Let something happen that we believe is just the worst thing possible that could have happened that day. All of a sudden we start focusing on that instead of where you need to go. There's something that can be done about everything, y'all. Something that can be done about everything. That's why Reverend Lisa presented this topic, because she knows at some point in your journey, we must develop the ability to open the door to gratefulness no matter the circumstances. Even when things appear to be going to hell in a handbasket, we have to have an attitude of gratitude. M.J. Ryan wrote a book called Attitudes of Gratitude. And in it, she talks about how to give and receive joy every day of your life. She said, what interferes with our bliss is our focus on what we don't have. That's what was going on with my friends. They were in a mindset where they were focusing on what they didn't have instead of focusing on what they do have. You see, we must take the long view, she says. We must see our lives from a spiritual perspective. See, spirit is endless. Spirit never dies. So we got to take the long view and see this life from a spiritual perspective. We have to cultivate gratitude as the key to living from an open heart. That's right, she says gratitude is the magic key. So when we open the door to gratitude, the world is transformed into a beautiful wonderland in which you are invited to play. See, when you're looking at the world through the lens of gratitude, you're just like them kids that was out there last week having a good time, playing your way through life. She reminds us that gratitude, like most spiritual truths, is stunningly simple, but not necessarily easy to practice. We must constantly remind ourselves that just like love and hate can't occupy the same space at the same time, It's impossible to feel the positive emotion of thankfulness and a negative emotion of fear and anger at the same time. How were you feeling that day? Like a baby learning to walk, we must celebrate every step, no matter how many times we fall down. Bitterness and resentment is the antithesis of gratitude. You see, so over these last few weeks, a lot of us have been just beside ourselves. In an emotional frenzy, many of us have spewed the same hatred and venom we claim that we voted against. I understand the impact that emotions can have on a person. I'd be remiss in my ministerial duty, however, if I didn't tell you that negative emotions-driven decisions manifest in negative results. Ego and emotion, if it's involved in the decision you're about to make, look out. It ain't gonna be right most of the time. You see, there's an illusion that there is a drastic change taking place, that everything is getting ready to just change for the worse. Everybody's worried about the 2025 manifesto. And I came here today to tell you it's no different than the one they had in 1625. Same manifesto. And we've been moving and getting along and going up and down and through all the time. There was a little incident, they called it Beacon's Revolt. Because you see, when they brought y'all over here, they brought more people from Europe over here at the same time. And all the poor slaves worked in the fields together, white, black, wherever you was from. And guess what happened? They got together one day and decided they ain't paying us anything, let alone enough. We're not benefiting from the fruits of all this labor that we putting out. So they revolted. They went on strike. They started acting a fool. And the people that were in charge, which were the landowners, the rich folk, they were the governors, they were making the laws, they were making all the rules. They said, oh, we got to do something to put this revolt down. Guess what they decided? Since most of them were from Europe, they said, we're going to let all the white people, skin color, have a little piece of property, a donkey, some hay. We're going to let them vote. We're going to let them have guns. We're going to give them more and leave all the dark-skinned folks on the field. Now, I don't know about you, but if I was one of them white folks, I'd have took my donkey and went on about my business. But that was the invention of white people. Right then, the Beacon's Revolt. Because before they were Swiss, Irish, English, German. You understand what I'm saying? So that happened in the 1600s, y'all. They created this unequal playing field based solely, not intelligence, not your character, but solely on skin color. Now, since that time, I don't want to take you too far back, so let's bring it forward a little bit. Let's go to 1953. That's the year I was born. Since 1953, we have had 7 Democratic presidents, and we've had 7 Republican presidents. So it's been going back and forth, up and down. Now, there's a difference between the demeanor, the personality, the delivery of all those different presidents. But the platforms that they put forth were all the same. They might have smiled at you while they said it, or they might not have said it at all. But the idea was the same. So I'm only telling you this because all these years we've been dealing with this stuff. And if you look around, if you look at where we are, we're some of the most intelligent people. We rise to the highest level of every vocation that we ever endeavor. You are what they call them now, influencers. There's no people on earth that have had the influence on the world that you have. Fashion, You name it. They walk like us, they talk like, everybody want to be like Ike. Dark Ike. Through all these years, no matter what's been done to us, no matter how much they've tried to oppress you, you have come to the top of every area that you've endeavored. So I like to look at things and break them down at the important stuff. See, because we get caught up in this personality stuff. I try to leave that alone. But what's important, because we all know living in this country, land ownership, housing, that's the real foundation for all of us. More of that can close that wealth gap quicker than anything else. So in 1968, they had what they called the Fair Housing Act. LBJ signed that one. In 1970, black folks, 42% of black folks owned a home. By 2017, only 41% of black folks owned a home. If we go back to 1950, 35% of black folks owned a home. By 2017, it had grown to 41%. But guess what? During our biggest surge in the 2000s, we went up to 46% home ownership. Guess what it is today? Ain't that bad. It's back down to 44. So it's going whichever kind of way. Where in the other communities, 71% of them own homes. You see, in all the categories that are most important to us, housing, education, employment, we made the biggest advancements in those areas during the Jim Crow consciousness. My good friend Maurice Kitchen tells me all the time, he said, we've made more advancements as Negroes than we have as black people. So this atmosphere that we're all upset about, it ain't new, y'all. There's nothing new about it except the person spewing the venom might have a bigger mouth and a more brash personality. It's the same thing we've been going through, and we've done well and can do better if we don't waste our time talking about them. If we spend our time talking about what we as a community, what we as a people, those Jim Crow times made us lock arms and walk. Made us stand on corners with shotguns with stop signs strapped around them. We did something. We didn't just sit around and talk about it. And I'm not saying we should go in the streets and do anything, but that's not what I'm saying at all. I'm saying, but each one of you collectively and individually can do something constructive about your situation. Decide you're going to spend some time working with a nonprofit industry that helps kids get an understanding about financial literacy so they can buy a house when time comes. Small stuff we can do. My wife's been volunteering at the National College Resource Foundation. That's the kind of stuff we need to do. Be there, help these kids, do something constructive so hopefully their graph will be like this instead of like ours. So, like Jim Brown said to Richard Pryor when he was laying there with his life all burned up, what you gonna do? What you gonna do? Because talking to your friends about the shortcomings and immoral character and brash personality of your president-elect won't change nothing. It'll just heighten your depression and your anxiety. Holding a grudge or disassociating yourself with those who think and may have voted differently won't change nothing. It'll only enhance the divide and minimize the opportunity for constructive dialogue. You see, our forefathers died for the right for us to vote. And we have a mandate to exercise that right. But we also cannot allow the outcome of that vote to negatively invade our consciousness. You see, my political and social idol, Malcolm X, told us a long time ago, he said, don't be hoodwinked into believing that any politician will change the trajectory of your life. Only your personal relationship with God, self, and community can do that. Political, religious, and cultural differences are being manipulated by those in power to keep us at each other's throat, while 1% set the parameters for the 99% to live by. And the names of that 1%, it ain't who you think it is. You don't even know these people. They're the ones telling him what to say and do. So I'm just telling y'all, I feel you. I'm just as disappointed as you are. Like most of you, when Barack got elected, I cried like a baby. And like some of you, when this happened, I felt pretty sad and disgruntled. But I got to tell you something. I had to change my view almost instantaneously. Because I'm more concerned about the $1.4 trillion that circulates through our community only one time, while everybody else touches the dollar in their community 4 to 7 times. I'm more concerned, I'm more troubled, I just don't know how to put the way I feel, but I'm concerned about the number one cause of death for young black men 30 and under is a gunshot wound that did not come from the police. I'm concerned that the second most reason for death of that generation today is suicide. You see, that's where my focus goes. So this little stuff this little, whoever the president is and who the mayor is, it's good for conversation. But when you get down to the bottom line, these statistics are the ones that really matter. And to change those requires us to get involved, us to do something, us to open up our minds, because you never know where the check is coming from. You see what I'm saying? It's not a color thing, y'all. They're trying to make you think it is, but it really ain't. You know, y'all know my history. I have a friend that used to own a bunch of check cashing places in this community, Nick's Check Cashing. I grew up, didn't even know he was a white man. But when he became my client, I found out, we became so close, so tight, I'll say, in that relationship, that we would literally, and have done this, by the way, stand back to back in the streets, armed and ready to do battle with those who were trying to harm us. That's how tight we were. Now, we never had a political conversation. I don't know who he voted for, don't care. But I do know this. When he sold Nick's Check Cashing for $46 million to Connecticut Federal Credit Union, he paid all of his stockholders, this was privately held stock, wasn't general that anybody could buy. He paid all of them off. And when he got through paying them all off, he still had about $12 million for himself. And he called me one day on the phone, he said, I haven't heard from you. I said, well, I figure you're busy, blah, blah. He said, didn't you get a letter from me? I said, no, get no letter from you. I sent you a letter, you better look for it. You know, you get that stuff look like junk mail. My wife gets on me all the time, I'm throwing stuff away. I went out in the trash can and started digging and found this letter from some trust fund that I didn't know the name of, never heard of before. Opened the letter up, $20,000. I didn't buy no stock. He said, I just wanted to let you know how much I appreciated what you did. White boy. And for all I know, he could have voted for you know who. Do you think that's going to impact my relationship with him? No. Ain't gonna. Not at all. So here we go, y'all. This thing that we're dealing with, it starts with self. So we have to make a decision. We have to decide during this time and at all times that knowing everything is in divine order, that I'm going to always be open to the door of gratefulness. That I'm going to give thanks for every situation, every condition, every experience that I have the opportunity to move through. That I'm going to make a daily decision to extend my contact with the Christ consciousness. I'm going to think positive thoughts and speak affirmative words and try to do loving deeds. You see, if you align yourself with the black population, if you align yourself with the immigrant Hispanic population, if you align yourself with the LGBT plus communities, if women's rights, equal justice, educational opportunities, and economic parity, if all those things are important to you, this is no time to fret. We need to follow the teaching of this teaching and align yourself with an affirmative attitude of mind that is positive, stable, and above else, embrace the real unity in spirit that is already complete and perfect. That's what you can do. As it says in Matthew 5:48, be ye perfect as our Father in the highest of consciousness is perfect. We must see every wrong condition and every wrong circumstance as something that we can change. Reverend Paul, he told us we have to get past the confusion in our minds. Guess who's creating that confusion? All these different news channels. One's over here, one's over there, and a few of them in the middle. You just can't get off the TV. And when you turn it off, you are confused. You don't know who's telling the truth, who's lying. You don't know nothing but what they tell you. Reverend Paul told us that we have to get past that confusion. And it starts by loving yourself. It starts by being grateful for yourself. It starts by being content with all aspects of yourself. So whether you're happy or sad, whether you're prosperous or needy, whether you're righteous or self-righteous, stop fighting yourself and start loving yourself and be grateful for it all. This new president-elect should motivate you to do more for your community as a community. When things are to your liking, I suggest that you open the door to gratitude. And I suggest, as Reverend Paul did, that you start by asking yourself some questions. What do you believe about yourself? What do you say about yourself? And what do you expect from yourself? What vision do you have for yourself? You see, vision requires feeling, not just seeing. Ain't that right, Reverend Paul? You got to be able to vision a world that you want to live in. And if all of us collectively have that same vision, guess what's going to happen? The world is going to change. Things are going to shift. But it's going to shift because of what we do. Reverend Lisa says, open the door of our consciousness to be grateful. She said it because she wants us to speak with authority and assurance. Be grateful for what you can and can't do and not complain about what you can't do. She reminds us when there's no one willing to help you, there's an opportunity to call on that eternal helper, the power of God within that will always be there to help you. We're only limited, folks, by our dreams. God's gift of imagination can only be limited or magnified by the one imagining. Ernest Holmes tells us wrong conditions can't remain unless we experience them in consciousness. That's why we were told years ago, the more you talk about it, the more power you give it. America, great country, marketed all over the world as this great Christian nation. But over half of the people in it voted for someone who defies every ethic that Jesus ever represented. Great Christian nation. But only 25% of people in this country attend church on a regular basis. So what do? We should respond with expectancy and conviction to a conscious recognition and receptivity of a higher power. We don't need to drive or push, we just need to accept and believe. We need to use this perfect law that we should expect results and should be willing to give up everything that would hinder our demonstration. Whatever the physical or mental challenge is, your job is be able to move into a new frame of thought instead of getting mired in the condition that you perceive. We can't eliminate controversy with more controversy. So now that you know what to expect, ain't nobody sneaking up on you, we need to develop more trust in each other. We need to remain as unwavering with our faith in God. You see, if we can make it through our babies being sold, if we can make it through our men being castrated and our women being raped, our business being burned to the ground, and still perform at the highest level in every area that we choose to enter, we can survive this current environment. As long as we open the door to gratefulness. I'm going to leave you with the words of Paul as he spoke to the Philippians. He talked about an affirmative power, the things of Christ. He talked about how we can have the fervor to establish faith and persistency to overcome all of our negative states of mind. In Philippians 4:10 and 13, he says, "But I rejoice in the Lord gratefully that I have continued to care for me, just as you have always cared, and even though yourselves have not had sufficient. Nor am I saying this simply because I am in want, for I have learned to make what I have sufficient to meet my needs. I know what it is to be poor, and I know what it is to be rich." We've had them both. "I have gone through many things and experiences many things, both to be full and both to be hungry, both to be plenty and both to be in want. I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me." He told them that he was grateful for their support during the times that we were lacking. He said, with gratitude, we must acknowledge what we have is always sufficient. He said, "I have much and I've experienced much. I've experienced having a lot and I've experienced having a little. I can make it through all by becoming more like Jesus, by being more giving, more loving, and more faithful." Paul is reminding us that we will receive according to how much love and trust we exemplify. The closer the relationship with God, the better your relationship's going to be with others. We can choose to be at odds, or we can choose to join together in spiritual harmony based on unconditional love. The Christ consciousness can and will bring redemption to all who embrace its spiritual understanding. All we got to do, y'all, is open the door to gratefulness. I mentioned my childhood idol, Malcolm X, earlier, and he's known for saying, "by any means necessary." You know how he's got that, he started out with that very militant attitude and perspective. So did I. But after he went to Mecca, he came back with a new attitude. After I got out of Fremont High School and started actually playing football and baseball with some folks that didn't look like me, I had a different attitude. Because them guys was blocking for me. So they were my friends. So Malcolm evolved, and I have evolved, and I want all of you to evolve. So instead of saying by any means necessary, you know what he said just before they took him out? He said, we need more light about each other. Light creates understanding. Understanding creates love. Love creates patience, and patience creates unity. Open the door to great things.
Thank you, Reverend Jerrold.